In this world, people can obtain remarkable abilities by consuming the fruit of the skill tree. With some luck, one could gain mastery over fire or even become a sword saint. However, Light's destiny was far less fortunate. He ended up being nothing more than a nutting master. On the day when skills were bestowed, Light and his childhood friend, Lena, made their way to the church to participate in the ceremony. As they walked, the two eagerly discussed the skills they hoped to receive. Light had always dreamed of becoming an adventurer, so he would be delighted with any combat-related skill. Lena, on the other hand, wasn't too concerned about what skill she would gain, as long as it meant she could stay by Light's side. Still, she couldn't help but feel a bit anxious since no one could predict what skill they would receive until they actually ate the fruit. But Light was certain that both of them would acquire incredible skills. Unfortunately, we already know how things turned out for him. When Light and Lena arrived at the church that day, the Holy Sister explained how the skill fruits functioned. The moment one consumed a fruit, they would be granted a skill, ensuring them a career in any related field of their choice, without the burden of crippling student loan debt. Each person was allowed to choose a single fruit to obtain their skill, but there was one absolute, inviolable rule: a person could only ever consume one skill fruit in their entire lifetime. Attempting to eat a second fruit would result in poisoning. Many had perished because they were unsatisfied with their given skill and made the fatal mistake of consuming another. The Holy Sister emphasized this point, making it abundantly clear that eating more than one fruit had a 100% death rate. Lena was shaken by how perilous the skill fruits could be, but the Holy Sister reassured her that as long as she never attempted to consume a second fruit, she had nothing to fear. With all the warnings given, the Holy Sister instructed them to proceed with selecting their fruit. Lena went first. As she bit into one of the fruits, a powerful sensation rushed through her body. A brilliant light engulfed her, and moments later, her entire body radiated intense heat. The Holy Sister instantly recognized this phenomenon. Lena had acquired the legendary Sword Saint skill. It was an exceedingly rare skill, one she never expected to witness in person. Now that Lena had become a Sword Saint, she was destined to become one of the most powerful adventurers in the nation. Light was genuinely overjoyed for Lena, congratulating her on obtaining such an extraordinary skill. But now, it was his turn. Stepping up to the altar, he carefully selected a skill fruit for himself. He never expected to receive something as extraordinary as the Sword Saint skill, but he still hoped for a strong combat ability, one that would allow him to fight alongside Lena. However, as he took a bite and felt the power surge through his body, his excitement was quickly replaced by dread. It turned out that he was merely a nut master. The Holy Sister tried her best to offer some words of encouragement, but the reality was clear: Light's only real battles would be against pests in the fields. Crushed by the fact that his dream of becoming an adventurer was now impossible, he asked if he could take another shot at it. However, the sister stood firm on the 100% fatality rate and absolutely refused to let him consume another skill fruit. Lena did everything she could to cheer Light up, insisting that she didn't mind staying in the village to grow fruit with him, as long as they could be together. But the Holy Sister had no patience for such sentimental nonsense. Lena's Sword Saint skill was an unprecedented gift, a once-in-a-decade miracle, and there was no way she would allow her to squander that talent on farming. She declared that Lena had a duty to the country and that she would be escorting her to the royal capital immediately so she could begin her training as an adventurer. Lena couldn't find it in herself to go against the Holy Sister's decision, and in the end, she was taken away. However, before leaving, she made a heartfelt promise to Light. One day, she would return for him. 3 months had passed since that fateful day, and Light did his best to come to terms with his new life as a farmer. He dedicated himself to his work, using his powers to ensure his nuts grew to be large and healthy. Once they were ripe, he took them to town and sold them for whatever profit he could manage. As long as he pushed those lingering thoughts to the back of his mind, his life wasn't completely miserable. One day, after finishing his harvest, he made his way into town to sell his nuts. Unfortunately, since they were so small, he was paid very little for them. As he was heading home, something caught his eye: a poster with news about Lena. In the short span of 3 months, she had already climbed the ranks and achieved the prestigious title of S-rank adventurer. She was excelling in ways he could never hope to match. Of course, he was proud of her, but seeing her success only deepened the sense of failure within himself. He knew he lacked the skill to be an adventurer, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that he should have been capable of more. For months, he had trained tirelessly, holding on to the desperate hope that he might unlock a sword skill through sheer determination. He practiced day after day, swinging his blade at the same tree stump, convinced that if he could just split it in half, it would prove that he was strong enough to carve his own path as an adventurer. But effort alone wasn't enough to change fate. The only thing he had gained from all his training was a pair of sore, bruised wrists. Collapsing to the ground in frustration, he couldn't help but wonder, did Lena still remember him? She had promised to come back for him, but with the fame and fortune she had surely amassed, it wouldn't be surprising if she had completely forgotten both his face and his name. Just then, a small girl named Lila approached him, holding out a cup of water. She was essentially an orphan. The village chief hadn't wanted to deal with her, so one day, he had simply left her on Light's doorstep. Seeing that she had nowhere else to go, Light took her in, and the two had been living together ever since. Lila informed him that she had already finished making dinner, so if he wanted, he could come inside and eat. Light gladly accepted the offer. Taking his first bite, he enjoyed the taste of the meal, and as he ate, Lila curiously asked him how the day's harvest had gone. All in all, Light commented that today's earnings were pretty decent, especially since he had started focusing on cultivating skill fruits. He made sure to mention that he had carefully sorted all the skill fruits into boxes clearly marked with skull emojis, stressing to Lila that she absolutely must not eat any of them. However, Lila hadn't been aware of the dangers that came with consuming skill fruits, so Light's warning was definitely valuable. At least, it would have been about an hour ago, because she had already used several of those fruits in the stew they were currently eating. Light shot up in a panic and asked if she was absolutely certain that she had put skill fruits in the stew, but Lila confirmed it without hesitation. From what the Holy Sister had explained, eating a second skill fruit was an instant death sentence. Suddenly, Light's entire body started to feel hot, and a sharp pain surged through his chest. He assumed this was the end. He collapsed onto the floor, and with his last breath, he apologized to Lila, blaming himself for expecting her to understand labels when she hadn't even learned how to read yet. However, as he lay there, bracing himself for the inevitable, he realized that something was off. The fatal reaction he had been dreading wasn't happening. After what felt like far too long, he slowly sat up, utterly stunned to find himself completely unharmed. Lila noticed the bewildered look on his face and asked if he was okay, but that was exactly the source of his confusion. By all logic, he should have been dead. How was he still breathing? Before he could dwell on it further, a sudden, intense headache hit him, and a new surge of energy coursed through his body. At the same time, Lila clutched her head in pain. Since she had also eaten the stew, that meant she must have acquired a skill as well. In that instant, she found herself able to see strange floating words in front of Light, and without thinking, she started reading aloud the details of his nut master skill. Aside from giving him the ability to cultivate nuts, the skill also granted him complete immunity to all nut-based poisons. Light was taken aback by this revelation and asked Lila how she knew any of this. She explained that she could see the words floating in the air, which led Light to quickly deduce that she must have obtained some kind of appraisal skill. Lila continued scanning through Light's information and suddenly gasped. She discovered that he had now acquired a second skill. With excitement, she revealed that it was called Sword God. The Sword God skill drastically enhanced his attack power whenever he wielded a sword and provided an immense boost to his magic resistance. If what she said was true, then this meant Light's long-lost dream might actually become reality. Needing to confirm it for himself, Light grabbed his sword and rushed outside, heading straight for the forest. He raised his weapon and, with a single swing, effortlessly cleaved through the old tree stump he had struggled with for months, along with the massive tree standing behind it. At that moment, there was no doubt about it. Light had officially become overpowered. The following day, he set off toward town, eager to visit the guild and finally register as an adventurer. He was overflowing with excitement. This was the moment he had been waiting for his entire life. The first thing that caught his attention was the massive notice board covered in bounty quests. If he could successfully complete one, he would earn enough money to buy proper equipment and maybe even enjoy some high-quality food. But financial gain wasn't his only motivation for coming here today. He was determined to put his newly acquired Sword God skill to the test in real combat. If things went well, he might finally achieve his lifelong goal of becoming a full-fledged adventurer. He instructed Lila to sit on a nearby bench and wait for him while he went up to the front desk to accept a quest. While she waited, Lila decided to use her appraisal skill to analyze the people inside the guild. She was fascinated by the sheer variety of unique skills she came across, but she was also baffled by how utterly useless some of them were, like the one guy who had a skill that inflicted self-damage. At that moment, a commotion erupted from the front desk. Lila turned her head and saw Light in the middle of a heated argument with one of the adventurers. The man instantly recognizes Light as the nut vendor from the market and bursts into laughter, loudly proclaiming that someone like him has no place in the guild. Light, however, completely ignores the comment and casually turns to Isla, stating that they can leave now. The man is insulted by Light's indifference and reacts in the most rational way possible, by drawing his sword and attacking. Fortunately, Light's Sword God skill not only amplifies his strength but also sharpens his reflexes, allowing him to block the strike effortlessly. The man is caught completely off guard by Light's ability to parry his attack. Realizing that Light is actually capable of fighting back, the man becomes even more enraged, fully intent on committing murder right then and there. However, his friends quickly step in, recognizing that this is a fight he absolutely cannot win. With that, he and his party leave the guild to embark on their first mission. Shortly after, Light and Isla also exit the building, as Light has successfully secured a quest for them. Their journey takes them to the rocky plains, and Light is brimming with anticipation at the prospect of encountering a real monster for the first time. Understanding the dangers of the area, he reminds Isla to stay close to him at all times. Before long, they spot their target in the distance, a slime monster. Light steels himself for battle and moves cautiously in an attempt to sneak up on it, but despite his efforts, the slime immediately notices him. Switching strategies, Light abandons stealth and goes for a direct, head-on attack. With his newfound strength, he dashes toward the slime and swings his sword, slicing it clean in half. The force of his attack is so overwhelming that it even leaves a deep gash in the ground beneath it. He's relieved to confirm that his skill is incredibly effective in battle, but he also realizes that he'll need to work on controlling his power to prevent unnecessary destruction. Isla cheers for Light, congratulating him on completing his first official quest. Now, they need to carve up the slime and bring its parts back to the guild in order to exchange them for money. Isla hesitates for a moment, admitting that she feels guilty about chopping the slime into pieces. However, Light quickly reminds her that selling the slime parts will earn them enough money to buy pizza. Without a second thought, Isla immediately abandons her morals and gets to work dissecting the creature. Just then, they hear frantic shouting from the other side of the plains. Rushing over, they come upon a chaotic scene. Jean and his party are being viciously attacked by a massive ogre. The group had specifically chosen an easy mission, intending to kill a single slime and call it a day, but they never expected to run into a monster of this caliber. The ogre swings its massive weapon at them, forcing the adventurers to scatter in desperation. Although they manage to avoid getting crushed, it's painfully obvious that they stand no chance against an opponent of this magnitude. Light calls out to check if they're all right, but the moment Jean lays eyes on him, a plan immediately forms in his mind. Without hesitation, he and his companions start sprinting straight toward Light. At first, Light is confused by their actions, but it doesn't take long for him to realize the truth. They have no intention of fighting. Instead, they rush past him, using him as a human shield so they can escape unscathed. Now, with Jean's group out of the picture, the ogre turns its attention to Light, leaving him no choice but to engage in battle. In a way, this situation actually works in Light's favor. He needs to test the full extent of his sword god skill, and this monstrous foe provides the perfect opportunity. The ogre raises its mace and swings it down with incredible force. Light reacts instantly, leaping to the side to avoid the devastating blow. However, Isla quickly warns him that while his sword god skill greatly enhances his attack power and reflexes, it does nothing to boost his defense. If he takes even a single direct hit, the result could be fatal. Despite knowing the risks, Light refuses to retreat. He has set his sights on becoming the world's greatest adventurer, and he understands that if he truly wants to reach that goal, he must overcome challenges like this. By now, he is fully adapted to his newfound power. With unwavering confidence, he propels himself into the air. The ogre roars in fury and swings its mace toward him, but before the weapon can make contact, Light delivers a single, devastating slash, slicing the ogre's mace clean in half. No matter what obstacles stand in his way, he is determined to catch up to Lena so they can be together once more. With a single, decisive motion, he brings his sword down, slicing the ogre perfectly in half, an incredible display of power that Jean and his companions witness from a nearby hill. A short while later, Light returns to the guild to exchange his collected materials for a monetary reward. However, the receptionist finds it difficult to believe that he managed to take down an ogre all by himself. In response, Light presents the ogre horn he had brought back as proof. To further support his claim, Jean's party steps forward and confirms that they personally saw him defeat the creature. With their testimony backing him up, the receptionist finally accepts his story and asks him to wait while she retrieves his payment. Meanwhile, Jean's friends take the opportunity to express their gratitude once again, sincerely thanking Light for saving their lives. At that moment, a crowd begins forming near the front of the guild, causing Light to wonder if something important is happening. Jean quickly explains that the S-rank adventuring party has just returned. This is the very same elite group that Lena joined, and it marks the first time Light has laid eyes on her in the past 3 months. Eager to reunite, he steps forward and calls out to her. However, to his utter shock, Lena responds with an icy statement, "I've never met this man before in my life." Light is completely devastated. He cannot fathom how Lena could have possibly forgotten about him in such a short span of time. Stunned beyond words, he stands frozen in place, his mouth slightly open in disbelief. Unaware of what's troubling him, Isla attempts to cheer him up, suggesting they go out for some pizza. Light agrees and takes her to grab a bite, but no matter how much he eats, his somber mood refuses to fade. Growing impatient, Isla warns him that if he doesn't snap out of it soon, she'll eat all the pizza herself. Light may be heartbroken over Lena, but he spent a considerable amount of money on this meal, and there's no way he's letting it go to waste. Determined, he eats at a rapid pace, so fast that he ends up choking. Just as he struggles to breathe, a kind stranger hands him a glass of water to help him wash it down. Relieved, he looks up to thank the person, only to freeze in astonishment when he realizes that the helpful stranger is none other than Lena. His instinct is to call out her name, but before he can do so, she quickly covers his mouth and whispers for him to stay quiet. If he makes a scene, Grouse will hear them. Taking a seat at their table, Lena glances at Isla, who eagerly introduces herself. Since this is her first time meeting Lena, she's curious about her. However, before she can say much, Lena finds herself wondering how in the world Light managed to have a kid in only 3 months. Before she can voice her suspicions, Light jumps in and cuts her off, immediately asking what she's doing here. In truth, Lena is wondering the same thing about him. She never expected to run into him at the guild. With a proud smile, Light excitedly announces that both he and Isla are now adventurers. He then recounts the bizarre incident with the skill fruit, explaining how it granted him a second ability. Lena seems genuinely happy for him, realizing that he has finally taken a step toward making his long-held dream a reality. Wanting to know more about her situation, Light asks how her experience with the S-rank party, Sacred, has been. However, from the look on Lena's face, it's clear that she hasn't been enjoying herself. In reality, she's just been forced to fight alongside a bunch of strangers that the Holy Sister handpicked for her. The compensation is excellent, but the atmosphere is more toxic than a Call of Duty lobby. Because of that, Lena warns Light to steer clear of Sacred if he wants to actually enjoy his life as an adventurer. Light, however, struggles to understand what makes Sacred so terrible, especially given how much praise they've received. Lena recalls an incident from 2 months prior when their team faced off against a massive serpent. Since serpents are weak to fire, Grouse ordered the mage to unleash a fire spell against it. The mage followed instructions but got carried away, accidentally setting a nearby farm ablaze in the process. When Lena tried to bring up the fire, hoping they could do something to extinguish it, Grouse displayed a complete lack of concern. In his mind, their objective was to kill the serpent, and they had done that. Anything else, such as collateral damage, wasn't worth worrying about as long as the mission was accomplished. Hoping for a different response, she brought the issue to the Holy Sister, but to her dismay, she was even more indifferent than Grouse. The Holy Sister didn't care about how much destruction they caused or how many innocent people suffered, as long as history remembered them as legendary heroes. Lena keeps the darkest truths about her party to herself, but Light can still sense that she's deeply unhappy. Wanting to help, he invites her to join him and Isla instead. As much as she would love to, there are certain circumstances preventing her from leaving Sacred. She tells Light that everything is fine, but he can see the tears in her eyes, making it painfully clear that something is very wrong. Yet, not wanting to drag him into her problems, Lena excuses herself from the table and walks away. A short while later, Light approaches the front desk to collect his reward for defeating the ogre. The receptionist hands him a pouch containing 10,000 gold pieces, an amount far greater than anything he has ever possessed. Normally, he would be overjoyed, but right now, he doesn't feel even the slightest bit excited. His mind is consumed with worry about Lena. He realizes he won't be able to help her unless he figures out exactly what Sacred is forcing her to do. However, since she refuses to tell him, Isla suggests a direct approach. Just ask Grouse himself. Conveniently, the door to his lounge is wide open. Inside, Grouse is lounging with 2 women, boasting about his many heroic battles. He recounts a recent encounter with an evil grizzly, explaining how his party set the bear ablaze with a massive inferno before he finished it off himself. At that moment, the receptionist enters the room, bringing up an urgent matter regarding his latest mission. The villagers from the area where the grizzly was slain have lodged a complaint, stating that Sacred's fire attack dried up their entire reservoir, leaving them without water. Grouse dismisses the complaint immediately, making up an excuse about how collateral damage is simply unavoidable when dealing with dangerous creatures. However, deep down, he secretly delights in causing problems for those he deems weak, believing they are beneath him. Light overhears everything and feels a surge of fury because he knows Lena would never turn a blind eye to the suffering of ordinary people. Outraged, he confronts Grouse, demanding that he release Lena from Sacred since it's clear she's miserable. Grouse, however, doesn't take him seriously at all. Instead, he casually calls security, instructing them to remove Light from the lounge. Isla rushes to his side, checking if he's okay. Light assures her he's fine, but the other adventurers pull him aside and warn him that provoking Grouse is a terrible idea. Sure, Grouse is an insufferable jerk, but making an enemy out of him means getting on the Holy Sister's bad side. And if she holds a grudge against you, you can kiss your adventuring career goodbye. The following day, all the members of Sacred gather in the lounge, indulging in self-congratulations and basking in their supposed greatness. Meanwhile, Lena reflects on Light's words. If being in Sacred makes her this miserable, then why is she still here? Summoning all her courage, she finally speaks up, boldly declaring to everyone that she wants to live as an adventurer guided by her own sense of morality. That is why, effective immediately, she is leaving Sacred. As she begins moving toward the exit, Grouse suddenly appears in her path, moving with startling speed, and threatens to kill her for daring to defy him. Lena instinctively reaches for her sword, ready to defend herself, but quickly realizes that even with her sword's saint skill, she stands no chance of winning a one-on-one fight against Grouse. Left with no other option, she removes her hand from her blade and submits. Grouse responds by striking her across the face, sending her to the ground. He then launches into a half-hearted speech, insisting that she must persevere for the sake of all the lives their party will save in the future. According to him, she has no choice but to keep enduring until the day she meets her end in battle. That same day, the Sacred Party prepares to leave town, and Lena has resigned herself to a life of forced servitude under Grouse. However, just as they begin their departure, their path is abruptly blocked by Light. Annoyed, Grouse demands to know why Light is standing in their way. Light boldly proclaims that he's come to take back his friend. Turning to Lena, he casually mentions that he and Isla were about to go hunt some monsters and would love for her to join them. After all, they made a promise to become adventurers together, and he fully intends to keep it. Lena remembers their promise, and as much as she wants to go with Light, she knows she doesn't have the strength to defy Grouse. She tells Light to just walk away before he gets himself hurt. Since Lena has rejected Light's invitation, Grouse assumes the matter is settled and tries to get him to leave. But Light refuses to back down. Instead, he declares that he wants to challenge Grouse to a duel for Lena's freedom. Grouse initially scoffs at the idea, dismissing Light as an unimportant nobody. However, Light goads him further by asking if he's afraid of losing to a nobody. Unable to let such blatant disrespect slide, Grouse begrudgingly agrees to the duel, planning to use it as an opportunity to make an example out of Light. Grouse, however, sets his own terms. If Light loses, he will be permanently expelled from the Adventurers Guild and banned from ever setting foot in the city again. Without hesitation, Light accepts. Lena, alarmed, pleads with him to reconsider, fearing that he stands no chance of victory. But Grouse has already drawn his sword, prepared to strike. Before he can make a move, Isla quickly scans him and warns Light about his Godspeed skill. This ability allows Grouse to instantly close the distance between himself and his opponent, making him extremely dangerous. Light grips his sword tightly but insists on keeping things fair, announcing that his skills are Nut Master and Sword God. Grouse, however, scoffs at the claim, dismissing it as an outright lie. After all, no one should be capable of possessing two skills. Without warning, Grouse vanishes and reappears in front of Light, attacking with blinding speed. Light barely manages to react in time but successfully blocks the strike. Grouse then launches a relentless series of rapid attacks, forcing Light into a defensive stance. With no time to counter, Light can only endure. Light manages to create some distance between them, but it's short-lived. In the blink of an eye, Grouse appears behind him and drives his knee into Light's side, sending him staggering forward. No matter where he tries to position himself, Light quickly realizes there is no safe place on the battlefield. As long as he remains within Grouse's range, he can be attacked at any moment. Acknowledging Grouse's overwhelming strength, Light still refuses to surrender. Instead, he charges forward, determined to land a strike. However, just as his attack is about to connect, Grouse effortlessly sidesteps. Caught off balance for a brief moment, Light is completely exposed, giving Grouse the perfect opportunity to shatter his sword with a single strike. With Light's weapon broken, the outcome of the duel appears to be set in stone. However, feeling particularly merciful, Grouse offers Lena a deal. If she swears unwavering loyalty to him for the rest of her life, he will spare Light. Light, however, reassures Lena that she doesn't need to make any sacrifices on his behalf. He promises her that he will find a way to win. Although he has been losing up until now, Lena chooses to believe in him. She puts her trust in Light, convinced that he will emerge victorious, no matter the odds. Irritated by all the disrespect, Grouse prepares to end the fight with his next strike. Light, now unarmed, scans his surroundings for a replacement weapon. His eyes land on a broom held by one of the spectators, and without hesitation, he decides to borrow it. Grouse assumes Light is mocking him, and to be fair, he's not entirely wrong. After all, Light could have just as easily borrowed Lena's sword instead. Despite this, Light remains fully confident that he can take down Grouse using nothing but the broomstick. He visualizes it as a real sword and focuses on preparing for Grouse's attacks. Up until now, he's been lagging behind because he was too focused on tracking Grouse's movements. However, with his sword god's skill providing him with exceptional reflexes, Light decides this time to trust his instincts and strike at the perfect moment. Thanks to his shift in strategy, his body is able to react the instant Grouse enters his range. He swings the broom with full force, smacking Grouse square in the face and sending him flying into a brick wall. With Grouse knocked unconscious, Light is declared the victor of the duel. Just to drive the point home, Light turns to the remaining members of Sacred and warns them that if they ever try to come after Lena again, they'll have to go through him first. He then faces Lena and tells her that she's finally free. Once again, he extends an invitation for her to join his party, and this time, Lena eagerly accepts. A week has passed since Light's duel with Grouse, and not much has changed. He's still tending to his nuts, but now Lena is by his side, which has made him far happier. Lena has prepared lunch for everyone, and as they eat, she asks Light how he's been recovering from the injuries he sustained during the fight. Light reassures her that he's feeling completely fine now, and is finally ready to go on a mission with her. Ordinarily, this would be a dream come true for him, but one problem still lingers. Every so often, Lena receives a visitor sent by the Holy Sister. For the past week, this messenger has been attempting to persuade Lena to meet with the Holy Sister and discuss her departure from Sacred. However, Lena insists there's nothing to talk about, as she has no intention of changing her mind. Unfortunately, earning the Holy Sister's ire means they are now being targeted. As a result, when they go to the guild to pick out a quest, they're only offered the most undesirable jobs available, such as exterminating sewer rats. These tasks pay very little, making it difficult to manage their finances. Even so, Lena isn't fazed in the slightest. She genuinely enjoys helping people, finding fulfillment in things like rebuilding destroyed homes, clearing out the sewers, and locating missing cats. By the time the day comes to an end, they've only earned a total of 100 coins, just enough to afford 3 pizzas. Despite the financial struggles, Lena feels happier than ever, knowing that she's making a genuine impact on people's lives. And for Light, this is the most fun he's ever had. Meanwhile, at the Holy Sisters Cathedral, she informs her assistant that she intends to assign Lena's new party a real job in the near future. However, this mission is classified as S-rank, one of the most difficult tasks possible. Whether or not she secretly hopes Light doesn't make it out alive remains to be seen. Watch the next video on screen, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next part.